Yeah.
We're on the move. Where we going though? Where we keep that up for me? Where we going? We're on the move. Headed to the mountaintop. Once you're at the top though, what do you have to do? Where are you gonna go? You're gonna go back down? You're gonna jump over to the next mountaintop? You're gonna bring people up behind you? You're gonna put a camera on the great view? What are you gonna do when you reach the mountaintop? What are we going to do when we get equality, full access to freedom? What are we going to do when we have all of the resources that we need to do what we want to do? What is it that you want to do? Do you have a plan? Do you have a dream? Are we living in yesterday? Are we living in somebody else's something? Are you making your contribution? Have you brought your head up above the water enough to see that there's a you inside of everything that you think is going on? That you have a responsibility and opportunity to become something that all of us look at, admire, and want a piece of, you know? You are all of that. I need you to step up to it. Why? Because I'm lacking. I'm not full all the time. Oh, I can pour from the cup quite often. I'm overflowing quite often. But there's times that I need to make an assist, not the points. And vice versa. So we're all here at the top of the mountain, access to it. We got the elevator, we got to push the button. Oh, you thought you had to walk? Some of us think we have to walk and walk. Some of us think that we're entitled and we figure out some way to get there. But the point is, once you have access to your mind and feeling that you are something and somebody and have the ability to make a contribution or an ability to make an observation, will you make a contribution or will you make a withdrawal? Will you deposit into man's needs or will you take advantage of what's been there and, take your little bite and, like a little cartoon I saw the other day where they showed a bunch of popcorn boxes, popcorn bags in a big box. And then they showed one orangutan come over and take 2 boxes out. And then all of a sudden there was orangutans coming from everywhere just taking boxes out. I don't even know if they were good. I don't even know if they knew it was good. But the point I want to make is that somebody made the deposit. And somebody is entitled, I guess, to do the withdrawals. I'm simply saying, folks, that making deposits is what we're capable of doing. Well, Wallace, what happens with all those deposits when I die? What do you mean, what happens to all those deposits when you die? Well, what happens to all of the success that I created when I die? Well, you take it with you, don't you? Yeah, you take it with you. They say you can't take it with you. You can't take the physical aspects of it with you. But as you go into that last moment of light before you pass into the brilliant darkness that possibly death is, that we just don't understand enough to explain. I'm not suggesting that you seek it out, but I am suggesting that what we leave and what we take the memories, we take the thoughts, we take the, I saw my stepfather smile. He wasn't in no smiling condition. He was on his deathbed, but he smiled because he was taking with him the memories of the blessings that he had bestowed on others and the smiles that we gave in return. You can take it with you. And I submit that we're here to share, to create and share, to create and enthusiastically share those things about ourselves that are worthy to put on the table for others to eat. Well, what you've been making, what you've been cooking, what you've been giving, we'll analyze that all the time. Your friends and family analyze that for you every day. They either laugh and smile at you, or they look at you wondering, well, when is he going to show up? I'm not talking about Anthony Davis at the Lakers. I had to make that joke because my boy, he does the same thing. He's got access to power, and it's easier for us to look at somebody else and say, well, that guy could be great every day, every night. None of us are great every day and every night. We all need somebody to make the assist, to make the pass. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen, here on the case for truth and justice with the right information to help improve the situation. Folks, I've got a couple of wonderful guests for you, young men who have ventured out, learned things, and given them back to some extent. And we're going to go through that right after this break. Right after this break, you'll get a chance to see what's on the table. Should you eat it? Should you throw it away? Or should you decide that, hey, that's a good idea, I'm going to put my... Hey, go get yourself together, folks. We'll be right back. Inspection time.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
Oh, guys, I'm always talking about the yin and the yang, the up and the down, and the in and the out, and how this, if you didn't have a left hand, you wouldn't know what right was all about. I love those opposite comparisons. And so I just read a book entitled Hell's Heaven. Hell's Heaven. Isn't that something? Even in hell, there's a section that's heavenly and a section that's more devilish than others. I mean, think about that. Hell's Heaven. And the gentleman who wrote the book, Mr. Anthony Florence, is describing, well, let me read a little something about. Anthony grew up imagining he would never scale his ghetto walls. Never scale his ghetto walls. Some of us would simply say, get out of the ghetto. But man, he's a little wordsmith here. Never scale his ghetto walls. After he won an academic award in the 6th grade, his mother and a white family sent him on a life-changing journey of no return, so they thought. Join Anthony as he navigates the culture shock from the ghetto of Roxbury, Massachusetts, to a private boarding school in Connecticut and the New York corporate world, before finally embarking on an adventure he thought would be his paradise dream in Central America. The rest of the title of that book, Hell's Heaven, A Metamorphosis in Costa Rica. Tony Anthony, how are you doing this morning, my brother?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
Well. Yeah, you are doing some good. Usually we're doing well, but you did some good. You woke me up a little bit. Gave me a different view of heaven and how It's certainly, as we say, heaven reminds us of hell, and that in hell you've got a certain amount of heaven. Uh, Tell us about that.
Well,
Tell us about just the
well,
idea.
hell's
Go ahead.
yeah, well, hell's heaven kind of applies to a place that I lived in Costa Rica, and it's basically a culture where the really the bad guy does better than the good guy. You know, and that's where it's really focused on my journey that led me up to Costa Rica. Well, it led me up to Costa Rica and what happened in Costa Rica.
You
As far
were
as getting, go ahead.
no. I'm looking at the different point here. Costa Rica, for most of us, we would imagine, like you said, it's a paradise. Things are great there, but at the same time, when you were there, you realized that the people who live there, who are native there, have a certain attitude as to what's heaven. And then, of course, the people who come to visit and stay, as you did, have another view of what's heaven. It was heavenly for you in the sense that, man, things were going finally for you the way you wanted them to. Oops, had a little accident. That's the hellish part. And right there in the
Yeah,
middle of all of the beauty, and you've described it so well, I'm very impressed, jealous a little bit of how you are able to use these words. And when I say jealous, I don't mean in a hateful way. I just jealous and wish that my eyes were better and I could read it better and, get more into the rhythm of it. But congratulations on that part of it. And for anyone who wants to do some, I guess, what we could call it's poetry. It's speaking. You should get this book, Hell's Heaven. I recommend it. Anthony, how can people get your book? It's Balboa Press.
well, yeah, they're at that Amazon and Kindle, Barnes and Noble online. They have it. It's pretty easy to access it. As far as the book is concerned, I mean, the big story happened in Costa Rica, but there was a lot of stories and transitions that happened before Costa Rica that is interesting in itself. After I got the academic award, I was put into different schools, different cultures, without any real advice behind me, and I just had to navigate through that world, and it wasn't easy, you know, because I was a different type of person than they were used to, and I had to start changing really, you know, I had to start changing who I was and kind of how I thought in order to succeed in these places that I was attending.
Yeah, you were sent on an opportunity trip. As far as your mother, the white family that thought they were certainly helping you become a better person, a more educated person. But we all go through that. We all go through some level of culture shock. I don't care whether if you'd have stayed in Roxbury, you'd have been in some level of culture shock whenever somebody new came through. But
Exactly.
what they were looking for was improvement in access to equality for you, and the education was there, and you were able to convert that, utilize that to go on to what we considered a good job, the opportunity to mingle with the white world, to grab yourself an opportunity to snatch those bootstraps and pull them up around your neck and make something happen. And you did. You made money. You were comfortable moving around with the money and decided, I guess, to retire early and go to heaven. go to
Yeah.
the islands of America here, South America.
Well, retirement and running restaurants, you kind of come out of retirement very quickly.
Well, running restaurants in America or any place, that's here in the newspaper business where we sell advertising. The restaurants. We've had more restaurants come and go in the Inland Empire than you can imagine. This has got to be one of the roughest businesses in the world, and to go and find some level of permanence with it. What are we talking about? Maybe 5-10 years for a good restaurant, and they're gonna flip out one way or another. But you had a great experience. But cooking isn't what you went to school for. You went to school for business management and understanding. But you got to Costa Rica and decided to learn about bribery and corruption. But you'd already done that. Wasn't there a certain level of bribery and corruption in corporate America, or is there?
Oh yeah, it's everywhere actually. It's just a little more exposed in Costa Rica or used. Put it that way. I think running the restaurant, learning Spanish, learning the restaurant business at the same time. It was a challenge, but I loved every minute of it. It's just the things that came into play in running businesses in a third world country became quite difficult.
The aspect of running the business plan, all of those things, you described that so precisely in the book, almost with each of your ventures. Which just tells me that wasn't the trouble. You didn't have any problem putting those things together, because you not only put them together, you wrote a schematic on how to do it, but getting along with the variables, the people. I noticed that one of the things that you were proud of is paying the people that worked for you better than they were being paid by other folk in the area.
I show them respect, for sure.
There was a certain amount of economic sense in that, but there's also an element of kindness that seemed to bubble up as we described that part of it. Folks, we've got a great entrepreneur, a great writer. You got to read his book, but I want to expose a little bit today about his thinking. He's a black man who was given a leg up as far as society was concerned, but his view on the world and his access to his own dream and making things come true fall to the same weaknesses that uneducated, other educated people do, and that's once we get what we want, do we want more? Can we figure out how to do it and make it work not just for ourselves but our community that we're in? And how do we tie that into the private life that we've chosen for ourselves? Anthony Florence, I haven't seen a picture of you, but I imagine you as a robust, young, good-looking guy at the right time, and educated and moving around into the circles and things that you did. You were that attractive black guy that folks wanted to be around.
Well, now you're never going to get a picture.
Now I'm never. Well, your book describes that. Your book,
I do take it.
It doesn't describe you that physically that way, but at some point I'm looking at a guy, that was a big guy, and beautiful women were attracted to you, or women that you thought were beautiful, and that's all it really takes.
They were.
Yeah, and our temptations in life are very common. In that, the rich man's temptations tend to be the same as the poor man's temptations. I heard our previous host on the radio, Pastor EC, say that you don't get to take it with you, and that what we do here is really important, and what you've been doing is really important. I'd like to give you a chance to describe your book right after we come back and give you a few minutes to tell people why they ought to buy it. And let's then talk a little bit more about your life. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen. I've got Mr. Anthony Florence on the line here. He's the author of Hell's Heaven, a metamorphosis in Costa Rica. And he happens to have my aunt's name backwards. Her name is Florence Anthony. So it made me pretty easy.
Oh, wow.
So we'll be right back and get a chance to listen to Anthony talk and not me. We'll be right back.
Publish your legal notice in West Side Story newspaper. For the best service and the best rates, call 909-384-8131. Publishing legal notices in the city and county of San Bernardino since 1990. West Side Story provides friendly expert service. Call 909-384-8131 to benefit from budget-friendly rates. Whether a fictitious business name, a name change, a divorce summons, or any other legal or public notice, call West Side Story newspaper 909-384-8131. 909-384-8131. That's 909-384-8131.
All right, we're back. This is Empire Talks Back. I'm Wallace Allen here on the case for truth and justice with the right information to help improve the situation. Today we're talking with Anthony Florence. He's a young man who grew up apparently having nothing, got access to a circumstance, a situation that gave him everything education-wise and gave him access to the upper echelons of the economy and living the high life. And he moved to, and Anthony, you can take it from there. Please tell us how you went from nothing to everything and back to nothing and now hopefully back to everything.
Well, we started out in Roxbury, Massachusetts, which is pretty much the ghetto of Boston. I lived very close to Bobby Brown, grew up at the same time that he did. There was 5 of us. And
normally, if somebody's going to drop a name like Bobby Brown living in the same neighborhood, you're also going to tell me you stood on a corner and sang a couple songs with him. Is that true or no?
No.
Okay,
no.
All right. I just wanted to check.
We were hearing about his group, that's for sure, and we stayed far away from his neighborhood.
Okay.
Ours was dangerous enough. We did not want to deal with his right now. So yeah, there was 5 of us, and my father left when I was 1. And I'll tell you something, he was in the back of my mind as I was writing this book. There's a lot of areas that...
Okay, somehow he dropped out. I don't know how we lost Anthony then. I don't know if I'm still on the air. Okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
But
can you hear me?
Anthony's story goes on to say that, like many young men, his mother he grew up with his single parent, and she was taking care of him and the brothers and sisters. And then there was also, what do we have there? Okay. Yeah, so Anthony, are you there now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, okay, I can hear you. Something happened over here. I don't know if
Okay.
yeah.
All right,
okay.
well, yeah, I was saying, there was 5 of us. My father left when I was 1. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. That's a little longer part of the story than I want to get into. The big thing is that you had little opportunity, but you didn't know that it was little opportunity. You grew up happy like most of us do, even when we don't have anything, until somebody starts to tell us that we don't have anything, and we see that later on in life. There's a big contrast in what you grew up with and what you had access to and how you lived your life in Costa Rica, in Panama. You, like Bobby Brown, or not Bobby Brown necessarily, but like many black men and white men, you've had successful and unsuccessful relationships with women, and had children with them. You had children with two different wives, married 3 women, right?
Yes, 3 baby mamas.
Right, and well, I mean, that's what they call them. I'm old enough to know that once you have a baby, you got something in life forever, regardless of whether you ever see them again. and the men who never see their children are miserable. And when they die, they take that thought to heaven too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
so
very, very close to my children. Very
yes,
close to my children.
and so there's
Actually,
there's an unfinished story in your story, which is good because we get, I guess, to read the second book. But we didn't talk about your children and your relationships with your children. You talked pretty much about getting along in the world, using your brain, and and your smooth talk, and you bragged about that a little bit, to get along in a world that's foreign to you, and we all have to do that. And we are all in a world, we, black men in particular, are in a world that appears to be accessible to anything we want, because we do see men who have had the Bobby Brown effect, the James Brown effect, the Obama effect. I mean, where you reach the top of the top.
right.
But we still
Well,
see that we have a lingering echo of seeking equality and access to equality. It appears that some of us think we have it and don't need any more of it. That's the Clarence Thomas effect. And then there's those of us who, like me, say there are many who have made it, and a reason for us to feel that we can do better and contribute more to the planet, because there are so many of us who still are in a position of need for education, need for access to economic power, in need for cultural understanding of self and other cultures. That that those of us who have some brain power and some aggression are in a position to help. And that's why I want to bring in Mr. John Burns. He has a research company called Umoja. And John, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
Okay, and John's doing good too. Most of us are just doing well, but John's doing good because he's a research guy, and he'll help you find something that you are looking for, and that is indeed doing good. Now, to push the idea of doing good a little further, I would like to bring a topic up, and John, we'll get a chance to talk about your company a little bit, but I want to bring up what I think is a cultural issue that's historic, and at the same time, it's futuristic, and at the same time, it's present in that if we want it to happen, we got to keep working on it. And that's the concept of reparations to black folk who are descendants of slaves in America, and in California in particular. California created a commission to discuss, discover, and recommend a reparations plan to the California legislature. That committee will be making their final suggestion, their final plan, recommendation to the legislature on July 1st of this year, which means they've pretty much come together with how and who and when and what. Reparations. Mr. Burns, John.
Yes.
Reparations, what does that suggest to you? How do you feel about the concept of reparations? Do you think, no, that's enough of a question. I could spend too much time asking the question. Let me let you answer it.
I think black people should realize if there are going to be reparations, who's going to control that money, and whether or not it's going to work in the best interest of black people, or are people going to just line up for themselves and end up as sharecroppers. So it's just like in the state of California, people received a check for COVID from the state of California, but the check actually came from New York. So who's going to control that money, and who's going to have some say-so?
Now, that's a good administrative, bureaucratic question, but it's not very entrepreneurial.
Well, see, entrepreneurial, you have to understand that, like, when I was coming out of high school and I went to Metropolitan College in Los Angeles, in economics, they talked about there's only three things in economics that govern the entire world, and that's capital, goods, and services. So Are black people going to control the capital? Are there going to be black banks? Are going to be black people in those banks? And then as far as goods are concerned, who's going to get the money, issue the money, and how's the money going to be spent for the goods so that people who perform services, whether it's selling cars, selling houses, selling food, or whatever, how is it going to be distributed and how is it actually going to be used?
Okay. Those are some questions that, once again, are bureaucratic and definitely coming from the aspect of how we administer. But once again, they are not the questions I think that an entrepreneur would ask. Let me ask an entrepreneur.
See, the entrepreneurs are out for themselves. You know, the entrepreneurs are going to have to understand one of these days, black people, if you look back in history, at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who was trying to teach people how to be self-sufficient, how are they going to produce something that's going to still be around when they're not around for their children and for their grandchildren? So it's going to have to be more than a person just looking for something for themselves as an entrepreneur. It's going to have to be something that is going to be sustainable, in my opinion.
Now, that sounds like we need to define entrepreneur. An entrepreneur, I know that, Anthony, you've got some thoughts on this. Because
no, definitely do. Definitely.
So I'm going to reserve my thoughts, and I'm going to ask my friend Eric if we could skip this break. He said yes. All right. In the definition of moving toward defining an entrepreneur, at this point it sounds like Anthony is saying that. Not Anthony, but that John is saying entrepreneurs are, pretty much self-oriented. And John, would I be putting words in your mouth if I said tend to be selfish?
Pardon me?
Would I be,
Say that again?
Would I be putting words in your mouth if I said that you are also saying that entrepreneurs tend to be selfish?
No, I'm not saying it's selfish unless the person who's going to receive benefit is only looking out for themselves.
Okay.
I'm just saying that people should realize that,
and I guess
our grandchildren, our children, there should be something there for them.
Okay, and I think that's
we should
good.
Be working for something that is there for these children.
Very good. Okay, Anthony.
Okay. Well, I think a true entrepreneur is somebody who is looking for a win-win situation. There are selfish ones that want to win-lose situations, but a win-win is a good way of living and living with yourself. As far as the reparations, for me, my first questions were like, who gets paid? Welfare recipient, prisoner, Magic Johnson, all of them are related to slavery. I would strongly suggest, putting the money in an organization that is controlled and using it to enhance our children. So to enhance their education, to take honor roll students like myself and maybe put them in private institutions. Because, connections, they start being made at a very young age. It's not just college, connections to other people. And you grow up and they start connecting to the other worlds, put it that way. Also in college, that money should be put towards scholarships to enhance our children, and scholarships towards college. And I would say also it should be put towards a skill program, training the parents to a skill, electrician, carpenter, whatever, and using that money in that area also. Now, if you use the money for scholarships for the minority kids to go to college, now you're not dealing with the money that the college has to create scholarships. So now you break that negativity that was happening, okay, when the colleges were kind of forced to bring in minorities. And I strongly believe in education and work skills and controlling that money, for sure.
I think
creating those organizations to do that.
It sounds like you have been attending the committee meetings because that's the direction they've gone. Certainly, the idea of individuals receiving money is there. The idea of creating an education fund is there. the idea of correcting some of the social ills that have resulted from our policing, from our systematic racism in our institutions, money to deal with that, and a whole array of trying to socialize and capitalize that money. My concern, one of the things I guess that I keep leaning toward is those things that are said, and Tony and John, I think you're absolutely right, both of you, in that somebody who's going to administer that common money, that money for education, that money for group corrections, and that needs to be very, very tight. But what happens when we give individuals money who have not had an economic education, or who, if they deserve it, and in California they say if you've been here 6 months and you're a certain age, you're gonna get a lump sum of money. What do we do with that? How do we get people to understand that that's opportunity, not a gift? John, one of the things that I've heard you say, and I have to agree, it says free money is not good money. There's a problem with free money. But then again, what's free?
Yeah, nothing's free.
Right. So
the other thing you can do with the money is, if they go to school to get a skill, those parents, you can create some kind of income for them. Okay, as long as they're committed to that school and committed to learning a skill. So that's not really free money. You're backing them up while they're in school themselves.
Yes.
So that's another way of doing things. It's award money, basically.
The idea of one of the things that I look at, not with reparations, but with the concept, and this is another viewpoint, another thing to talk about, universal income, guaranteed income. I look at that idea of giving people that money, but requiring that they pay their rent or the house note, that they pay their utilities, and that they pay their health care, certain things that they should pay, and then there should be enough money left for them to do some discretionary spending. Now, with data, with where we are now, data is one of the most important products that is being created, and it is being created by people who are not necessarily considering themselves manufacturing anything, but by filling in their email and their data in order to buy something or in order to answer some questions. They empower corporate America. You would agree to that, both gentlemen, right?
I agree to that.
Okay. So if I'm giving you access to information about my choices and the data about what I decided to spend my discretionary money on, we would actually fit into a category of people called paid shoppers. And so that money would not be free. I had to think about that, John, because of what you were saying about free money having negative effects. Certainly, welfare checks that require the man of the house to not be there. That's not free money. You're paying you're paying heavily a cultural cost to receive that money. What do you?
We? That's the thing. That's my big question: is who is we?
We. Okay, that's very good. To me, when I say we, I'm talking about those folks who are the root of my carrot. I'm the carrot. My little flower may be above ground. I may be able to pay my house note. I may be able to, ride in a decent car, send my kids to school, and not have to depend on government social programs to pay for myself. But I've got roots. I've got nieces and aunts, cousins next door neighbors, folks who look like me, who I could be mistaken for at any time, who need to be able to have their life upgraded. That's my we. And some of them, just like my family and like your family, some of them are heavily melanated, and some of them may look like they don't have any melanin in them at all.
Right. So how do you single that out?
I don't. I just be kind to everybody and go forward as strong as I can to create what I can. So I'm not heavy in that distribution point beyond my family and the people that I see, that I know that I can help. And so, like in South America, Anthony, when you noted that when a gringo, a richer person, assumed richer person, comes into that South American climate and atmosphere and culture and finds someone that he's in love with, he doesn't get to just be in love with that person. He becomes in love with their family and has to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
Would you explain that a little bit?
Well, Central and South America. Well, some gringos who have not been there a long time, they don't understand the culture of Central and South America, the Latino culture. The families are extremely close. I'm actually very impressed with it. And if you find a woman, and it's usually a younger woman, and you fall in love with her, and you decide that you want to marry her or whatever, you're marrying the family. And a lot of the times, if you have a better income, you're obligated, really, to help the family, because they do help each other. They can be very poor, but everybody eat one way or another.
And that's simply to help describe.
It's a beautiful thing.
Help to answer your question, John, about who is we. I know that's a loose response, but
right.
When I say we, who do you think I'm talking about?
Well, hopefully you're talking about black people, and hopefully black people that are listening realize that, black people really need to develop a black think tank with black professionals, whether they're CPAs, finance professors, or whoever, that can sit down and talk about if reparations will be given to black people, how will it be used wisely so that it can continue to be used to uplift black people into self-sufficiency.
Would you think Clarence Thomas would be a good person to chair that committee?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure about that.
No, and I say that, I say that to be mischievous.
The reason I say that is that Dr. Paul Goss of New Body Products in Compton in North Carolina, he had seminars in Arizona, and they were private cultural seminars, which meant there was only black people there, maybe occasional Native American or Mexican, but that was it. And so if you weren't along those lines, you couldn't come in. So it depends. I kind of question his being the chair. I don't know. I would have to talk to him, or I just don't know.
Go ahead.
Here's the other thing. Do you exclude Latinos from this program?
Ask that question again. I don't think we heard the whole question.
Do you exclude Latinos from this program?
Anthony, John?
What's the question now?
The question was, would that meeting in Arizona exclude or include brown people?
No, it wouldn't. On occasion, there had been Hispanic people there or Native Americans, but if a black person came in there with their white friends, they would just be immediately refunded and escorted to the gate.
Would Adam Clayton Powell be considered a black person or a white person at that time? Yeah,
I get the black person. The thing about it is that
the question you're asking. This question you're asking.
The best interest of black people.
That question ends up being relevant in terms of the reparations that the California committee's got to deal with. How do you determine someone's blackness? Is it going to be because of how
I'm not sure that you could, but the thing about it is that black people shouldn't sit around waiting for people to determine reparations. Black people should, like I said, be at the table with black think tanks and discussing what they need, what they want, and what they're not going to go along with.
Absolutely.
I would not give them. I would not give them money to us. I really don't agree with that.
You want to chair into a meeting like that, then call Louis Farrakhan. At least you know he's going to work toward the black people's best interest.
Well, now he's going to work toward. Well, I guess here we go in terms of best interest, and who can define the best interest. Can we depend on that coming from whom? And that while we're making that decision is why I go back over to the power of entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs do, John, what you're saying do. They don't wait. They don't necessarily seek approval. They don't certainly look for permission.
Right.
So that group of people, once again, as I pinpointed earlier, tends to be our ultimate leadership, because we've got social entrepreneurs, we've got economic entrepreneurs. And once again, those are the folks who are the Crispus Attucks, the Nate Turners, the Martin Luther Kings, the Malcolm X's, the Muhammad Ali's, the John Burns's, the Anthony Florence's, and the Anthony Garcia's, who is right here playing that beautiful little bass line behind me that you probably don't hear because it sounds so natural. Those people, you people, set an example. That example says, let's do it now. So my point, and this is why I agree with one of the things that you stimulated, John, when you said, ain't no, free money is not good money. And if we want reparations, there's certainly at least 1,000 black men around here who may think they want reparations, and they probably could put $1,000 together each, and that's $1 million. My concern again is, if the good magic lantern guy came around and said, okay, here's $1 million, what are you going to do with it? Just like the reparations person, the reparations committee may say that each black person that's over 16 years old in California, blah, 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 has got $1 million either in cash or a credit line. What are you going to do with it? How are we going to, and since that is a possibility, should we not be practicing those thoughts and pushing that thought every day anyway?
Well, we should. That again goes back to where I say you should have a black think tank where people who are educated can come up with the best solutions for black people and put it out there and let people see what their ideas are that can sustain black people, where you own your own black bank, you own your own black hospital, you own your own black grocery store, and that these things will still be here when we're long gone.
Well, we have
black people.
We have those think tanks. There are churches, there are fraternities, there are sororities, there's clubs and organizations, and these people come together on regular basis across the country.
Yeah, but do they come together in the best interest of black people? I would challenge that.
Well, from the point of challenging it, go on, Anthony, you were saying?
I just strongly believe that we need to enhance our children, and we need to support them. Even if their fathers left them, whatever, there still has to be like a support group that calls and checks in on these kids, enhance our children, and then create a job skills program for the parents, and then create an income even for the child to get an allowance so they can, be there, hang out with their peers, go and have a pizza or something. And then in college, the same thing. Just put them in a position of mostly all of the other kids, and they will grow, and they will make the difference.
So
you have to go to the root. You have to go to the root.
So right now we have people agreeing across the country that there's an education problem for everybody, but for black students in particular and young black boys in specific. What do we do? Should we continue to try to beat up the school system and change it, or should we supplement it with something that is designed specifically to bring our young black men together, bring them up culturally and educationally and economically, information-wise? From both of you, John, give me.
I would say the supplementation would be the greatest benefit, because it would be in the best interest of those black children.
Okay, and Tony?
Sorry, I lost my track for a second.
Yeah, the thought is, the question again is, do we want to beat up public schools or accept what they give and supplement what we think should be what is critical and important for our kids to learn?
What they need to upgrade the reading that the kids do in school, in the textbooks. I mean, they're growing up, George Washington cut down the cherry tree. He's a great man. We need to expose that one, and the other thing, that we were not the only slaves. As a matter of fact, any country, when you conquered the country, they became the slave.
That's the indoctrination. That's the information that we need to give them. But you're saying education, learning how to read, teaching them how to read, and you're saying that we should continue to pressure the public schools as well as create a supplementary education program for our kids.
Yeah, I would say the honor roll students, the black honor roll students, try to put them in the higher, like a private school or something like that. Integrate the private schools with them, and support them with support services, checking in on them.
I guess let me ask this question. Let me ask this question a little bit more directly. Do you think that we should continue to trust people to educate our children, people who have demonstrated that they do not have cultural competence or a desire to get at cultural competence, and that they want to flatten out the education access to everybody to where we're all dumped down to the same level? Or should we accept that, or should we add some supplementary education to our kids and have that done by people that somehow have demonstrated they have cultural competence and a desire to really bring our kids into not normalcy, but to a superior thinking and logic, thinking logically and critically?
I can agree with that. I can definitely agree with that. Supplementary education.
I guess.
And bringing in different books. I mean, they're reading books from 100 years ago, and they need to be stimulated with what they're reading.
Yeah, these guys don't even want. These guys are telling us that they don't even want you reading anything that might suggest a reason for somebody else to feel bad or upset or guilty about how they've been treated. That's going to be the public school, and they're going to argue about that possibly for the next 10 years. We don't want to lose those 10 years of kids. I think that, first of all, I'd love to have you guys join me again. This has been stimulating to me, and I think it's stimulating and informative to our audience. This is the quickest hour on radio. I got enough time to give Tony 20 seconds and then give you 20 seconds, John, and I'll leave me 10. Tony, take 20.
Well, this was a stimulating conversation. I'm really glad you invited me to join and to talk about my book. And I hope something does happen in the future in reparation. And as I said, we just need to enhance our children and stay next to them.
Thank you, sir. John?
I'd say to the young brothers and sisters out there, look up and read about Ma'at, M-A-A-T, the philosophy that came out of Africa. And for those of you who are looking for better health or to help your parents and grandparents on the internet, archive.org, look up Umoja Research, one word, UMOJARESEARCH, and you'll find over 90 folders.
Very good.
Health information.
All right, folks, it's Quickest Hour on radio. If you're young, find somebody old and help them out. If you're old, look out for somebody young and spread that wisdom. See you guys next week under two circumstances. One, if the good Lord's willing. Two, if the creek don't rise. God bless you. Thank you for joining us. Be good to the world.
KCAA Loma Linda.